All right. Well, here we go. Counting off the seconds. Well, it's August the 11th, 2022, and I'm speaking once again with Dr. Gregory Little, and on our ongoing feature from psychology to Indian mouths. And unless I'm mistaken, this is part 11 now. And so, anyway, Greg, good to talk with you again. And tonight, I understand we're going to begin discussing a term you mentioned in your book with Andrew Collins, Origins of Gods, called time, with an extra I in it, and why it's significant.
All right. So time stands, it's spelled obviously T. It's got an extra I, so it's TIIME. And it's really, okay, so the book, which is Origins of the Gods, that's the book, Origins of the Gods. The book is really, yeah, there you go. It looks just like this one. Yeah, there you go. It's about shamanism. It's about odd and unusual events and things. It's about UFOs. It's not a UFO book. I don't think we talk about any sightings at all in there. Really, there might be some, but I don't think so. It has a bit in it about ancient aliens and all that. But basically, what Andrew and I conclude in the book is that out of all the UFO reports, out of all the abductions, out of all the contactees that began in the 40s and the 50s and 60s, they went. And then, of course, we had abductees begin roughly in the 60s sometime. Out of all those, most of us know in the field that about 95% of all UFO reports are explainable somehow. And so that leaves a residual of 5%, which is actually pretty big. So then when you get into that 5%, probably half of that is also something that's explainable that we just don't really quite know yet. I think a lot of experimental craft are involved in this. But anyway, so what we're left with there is a core of some really weird stuff. And so Andrew and I, independently, actually, and I noticed in my book, The Archetype Experience, that came out in 1984, I actually hypothesized the same thing, and that is that the core of the phenomenon, what really drives it, is plasma. Now, plasma is not the whole story in this. Plasma is the fourth state of matter. I know we've discussed that before. Plasma is a superheated ball of ionized gas, which means there's a lot of molecules in this ball. And it's ionized because it's tearing apart the molecules and the atoms. It's tearing the electrons from the atoms, and that in turn is tearing more electrons from atoms. So it's a swirling soup of electrons, photons or light start coming out of it, and it has an electromagnetic shell around it. It is a very powerful emitter of electromagnetic energy, these plasmas that form. So there's more that I'll say here in a minute about exactly what happens when these things form. But the whole idea of time, it means transient intrusions of intelligent manifesting energy. It's transient. It's always transient. All UFO reports, everything is, you just don't ever hear about a farmer, a UFO lands behind his house. Think of old Joe Simonton, who had the aliens handed him a pancake. And not a very good pancake either, I believe. I think it was pretty bad. I've seen pictures of it. I didn't taste. He tasted it and said it was pretty bad. But anyway, a flying saucer lands or a UFO lands, and out walks some being, and usually tells the people the same kind of thing, that we're from some other planet. We are here to save you. You're killing yourselves. Nuclear weapons are bad, war is bad, whatever. That's always kind of the story when they first land. But the farmer doesn't ever get on the phone and get all his neighbors and go, hey, there's a flying saucer in the backyard. And then the whole neighborhood comes over, and they start holding a barbecue and they go out and pound on the side of it and all that. It never happens. These things are very temporary. The same thing with abductions. They're temporary. They are exceedingly temporary. Of course, everything is temporary, but they are very temporary experiences. They are intrusions. That's the first I. They are intrusions into our reality, into a very specific space and time. Very specific space and time. So it's a temporal intrusion of intelligent manifesting energy. And that intelligence means that whatever this is, whatever the force is, it is sentient. That is, it has some type of intelligence. It interacts with us. It has motive, although it's very difficult for us to discern what the motives are most of the time. But it has motive, and it's a manifesting energy. It's definitely a manifesting energy because these things appear just like plasmas do. It's kind of like they coalesce into something that appears to be physical. They literally coalesce. So these plasmas are created through energy. Where's the energy come from? Well, it's coming out of the earth. There are places around the earth that people have called portals, window areas where there are regular UFO flaps. These are places that have a special kind of geology. So the underground rock structure is creating this energy, and the earth generates its own energy. The earth generates energy and has a frequency, and it's called the Schumann Resonance. And the Schumann resonance is an electromagnetic resonance that the ambient resonance of the earth. We are in that all the time. Of course, we have a lot more now because as I sit in this room, there's electricity all around me. There's Wi-Fi's everywhere, cell phone towers. I mean, it's all over, and all that's putting out electromagnetic energy too. So, okay, so time is temporal intrusions of intelligent manifesting energy. We know that it has some sort of sentience or intelligence. So what happens when these things form? It's usually just one observer. Sometimes it's more than one, but not very often. There's not a lot of multiple witness cases. There's quite a few. But when I say there's not very many multiple witness cases, I'm talking about real close encounters where people are interacting with the beings or they're real close to what they're calling a craft. So that just doesn't happen very often where there's more than one person. And these things generally don't last very long. And so there is a interaction sphere that occurs around these plasmas when they form. A bubble of electromagnetic energy, kind of like a bubble occurs on the outside. And when you get inside that bubble and you're close to this manifesting time entity, when you're close to it, what it does is it interacts with you. You're not producing it. A lot of people have said that, oh, this is like a tulpa. And actually, they haven't used that term, but a tulpa is it's like a mind projection. It's something supposedly that we're creating with our own mind. We're not creating these things with our mind, but what they are doing is they are reading us. And I think it's all done electromagnetically. I think, we produce an electromagnetic field too. And actually, when you take an electroencephalograph on a person and you're getting the electrical activity, you're actually picking up the electromagnetic fields that are coming out of your head as you think and experience and so on. So I believe that these forces are basically reading us, reading our mental state, reading our culture, our cultural expectations, and probably a lot more. This gets really deep. Psychologically, it would get really deep. But these things are pretty much then adjusting their form and their behavior to the individual that they're appearing to or the people that they're appearing to. So that many, many, many centuries ago, people saw angels. And the angels manifested in such a way that they knew, that's an angel. They knew it. And the angels had the cultural appearance that these people would have expected. Then let's flip from angels and bring it closer to modern times, and let's talk about fairies and gnomes that people would see, say, in Great Britain, in that area. That was a cultural adaptation to the beliefs and expectations of the time. The more modern UFO stuff is the same thing. It is a cultural adaptation to us. So whatever this thing, whatever it is, it's manifesting and adjusting itself to us. Native Americans knew that. We've talked a lot about the Native American beliefs in this. They knew that this thing adjusted to them. That is why when they purposely interacted with these forces, they got themselves mentally straight. They prepared for it. They thought about harmony and harmonizing with it. They even tried to get their mental state to harmonize with it through adjusting the frequencies in their brain to the same frequencies that these entities or time beings have. So there are different ways that they used to harmonize with it. Everything from blowing whistles, which you know about, to drumming, repetitive drumming. Dancing will do it, repetitive dancing to pretty much to exhaustion. All of those things will get you harmonized with it. And then they literally grounded themselves. That's another whole story. Would use bare feet and put it in the dirt, not on grass, not on rock, but put it in the dirt. They grounded themselves. And that was a way to harmonize with this force. So that in essence is what the time being is. The thing about the adjustment, there's one other piece I'd like to say here, and it's about the trickster. We've talked about the trickster and said that the trickster almost always appears. And the trickster, Carl Jung even said that navigating the trickster is the whole job of shamanism. Shamanism is all about navigating a trickster. That was written by Carl Jung. So why is that the case? Why is it that the trickster will appear when the trickster deludes people? Think of all those contactees who were told one thing, and maybe there's some truth in what they were told, but we know a lot of what they were told were lies, such as, oh, we live on the planet Jupiter. We come from Jupiter, or we live on Mars. There's a city on Mars. We know that's not true. We know that's not true. If people want to believe that, it's there, we just can't see it, fine. But I do trust astronomers and space science on that. I don't think there's any cities on Mars. There might have been life there sometime at one time, but it's not there. We aren't there now. People like us aren't there. That's for sure. So when most people have what I would call an involuntary experience with one of these entities, an involuntary experience is one where they're not mentally prepared, they're not doing a ritual, they're not deliberately trying to call forth some sort of spiritual entity. So when they're having an involuntary experience, remember I said that when these things appear, they are reading you mentally. And they're actually reading something at a really deep, deep, deep level. And then they're adjusting their appearance and behavior to you specifically. Most people have bad stuff swirling around in their head. Most of us already have expectations about aliens. If you happen to believe in, say, the reptilians, the alien reptilians, or the insectoids, and you think they're all evil, well, you're primed to have that experience then. If you happen to interact with one of these time entities and it appears to you, it's probably going to appear in the form that you expect. So you're going to wind up having a bad experience with one of them. With somebody, Whitley, I'm talking to Whitley Strieber tomorrow. Whitley's experience is one that I find really, really interesting, because when Whitley interacted with these little grays or little beings, they weren't all gray. I don't think Whitley was thinking about aliens. I don't think Whitley was particularly afraid of it or any of that, but he was curious, and I think that shows in his experience. It wasn't a terrible experience for him. it wasn't horrible. In fact, he got in his head overall that it changed his life for the better in the long run. But it was not one where they showed whatever they really are. And he knows that. It's like the mask. There's something behind the mask all the time. So these things adjust their appearance to us. That is what they do. And most people are going to see something and interact with something, and the behavior of this something is such that it reflects what's in the people. And again, for most people, it's going to be an unbalanced experience because most people, at least today or for the past many years, have been pretty unbalanced. So that's what happens. So you have to navigate that. You have to get by that negative stuff. That's getting by the trickster aspect to get to whatever's deeper, because these things have a purpose. Their purpose isn't just to appear to us. That's not their only purpose. They interact with us and they are doing something. That is, they have a motive. The motive is probably beyond our understanding. The motive, like I used an example in the book of Joan of Arc. The motive of Joan of Arc, the angels that appeared to Joan of Arc told her point blank what their motives was and what they required of her. They told her that she needed to go and meet the Dauphin, who was going to be the crowned king of France, and you need to convince him to give you sword and an armor and a flag and the French army, and then you need to go kick the British out and make sure that the Dauphin gets crowned king of France. That is what her angels told her, and that is what she did. Unfortunately, she went further than that, and she did more than what they told her to do, and that led her to get captured and eventually burned at the stake. So that's almost the trickster element came at the end there. Edgar Cayce's another example. In the book, I mentioned Edgar Cayce and how Edgar Cayce had two experiences with angels. And in those experiences, he was basically told or came to the idea that it was necessary for him in life to become a healer, to help heal people. And when he started in his psychic stuff and in his psychic work, Cayce did health readings. Everything was about health. It was always about health. And the health readings are the ones that the science has really studied, and they're tremendously accurate. There's no doubt he helped many, many people. Well, eventually he branched out and he started giving readings in other areas. And those are the areas that are controversial, all of them, whether it's Atlantis or whether it's gold and oil, or whether it is this sword that we just found. And this is one that was wrong. That's why I'm bringing it up, because Cayce was wrong about some things. And one example is some people in Minnesota claim to have found a sword that was buried, and they thought it was a sword from Leif Erikson or someone, and was left there. And so Cayce gave a reading and said, yes, it is a legitimate Norse sword. And I can't recall if he named the individual that it belonged to, but it was found out later that the sword was a hoax. It was not a legitimate Norse sword. So Cayce went beyond it too. And when that has a real specific background to it about that sword thing, the people were proud that this sword had been found, and it had something to do with their heritage. So in the other areas where Cayce was wrong, one of them was actually in the very first readings about Atlantis, and those actually started. The Atlantis readings started because there was a group of businessmen who were interested in finding gold and silver in the area of the Bahamas. That's what it was all about. So it was about getting rich. We want to get rich. Let's use this psychic connection to get rich, which I understand. I understand. But it was against what it didn't fall in line with what the interaction he had with the angel was. Yeah. So that's the thing. There are these tricksters. It will become a trickster element. You have to navigate that and get by it. But that interaction sphere is really interesting. And it boils down to the mental state that you have when you enter it and what you believe about all this stuff. If you believe, it's like I watch these people doing ghost hunting in houses. I'm sure I know you've done ghost hunting in that. And I'm sure you would laugh at some of the stuff that you saw him do, every little noise. What's that? What's that? And we know that some of it is faked. They've thrown some stuff across the room and it, bounces around. It's like, it's great for film. But there are people that have bad experiences doing this, but they're primed for the bad experience. Their mental state is they expect it to be scary. They expect it to be a bad experience. So if they happen to be in a place, a haunted house, that is haunted because it's sitting on top of a portal or a window area, which I'll explain that in a minute in a little more detail. When it emerges and they interact with it, if they expect it to be scary, it's going to be scary. That's the way it is. So what do I mean about a haunted house being on top of one of those portals? Well, the neuropsychologist Michael Persinger, along with the geologist John Durr, many, many years ago, the Persinger is now deceased, but Persinger actually said that they believe, they did some research in it, and he published this in psychology journals, neuropsychology journals, that in some of the places where he believed that there were legitimate things going on that were weird and unexplained, that they had inadvertently in the past built a house on top of some sort of geological fracture or something beneath the surface with running water or granite being pushed together, or maybe a lot of other crystalline structures there. And that energy is constantly coming up from the earth and being discharged into the air, which in that case would be right inside the house. So that's what I mean by that. So yeah, there are legitimate places like that. Some people, of course, will believe that, we're seeing the souls of the dead. Fine. But I'm not talking about the souls of the dead. We're talking about something else here. So I know I've talked a lot. Never let you get a word in edgewise. You just let me blab away there, Brent.
Yes, I did, and you had a very well thought out series of interconnecting thoughts and elements there, what you said. So I certainly didn't want to interrupt the flow. That is that's very interesting. All those things you said, and how that all, I this, so many elements here. It was interesting what you said about Jung and his thoughts on the trickster, and yeah, and it seems like from what I gather that a lot of people are, and I've been aware of this for quite some time. They seem certain people who are experiences seem to be more open to maybe being hypnotizable or altered states, entering altered states, and it's part of their mindset too. It's hard to tell sometimes how much is the biology and how much is the way that they were brought up to think, and their life experiences, how it might have prepared them for some of these things. I remember Dr. Berthold Schwartz, a psychiatrist who was interested in all of this,
Yeah.
and used to submit articles when he was alive for alternate perceptions. And he said that many times when he interviewed a contactee, he found that from the very first session of hypnosis, they would go into a deep somnambulistic state. And he said only usually about 10 or 20% of the population would do that.
Yeah.
And he also made the comment a number of times that a lot of the people in the field that he met who had these experiences were like hyper suggestible, And I know you've written and we've talked about, brain chemistry and maybe magnetites in the brain and how it could relate to, the plasma
Sure.
thing and so on. And certainly a lot of the experiences people have are when they're in these states, they are experiences that reflect a lot of their own personal beliefs and so on, as you've stated. And so a lot of the UFO community looks at these stories, and some people have even gone so far as to say, well, we have identified this group of aliens from Sirius and this group from Orion and so on. And we've come up with 56 alien groups or so on. And it's all coming out of these experiences that are, someone said co-creation, between us and it, whatever exactly it or who it may be. There's lots of theories on that. But anyway,
Well, let me say that I don't think that we are creating the experience. It is create this these energies are creating the experience, but they are interacting with us. It's kind of like if you go to Disney World, you're not creating the experience. They're doing it. However, if you come up and you talk to the people that work there, they will interact with you. And they will adjust their behavior somewhat based on your behavior and the kids that are with you or whatever else is going on. It's an interaction. They're interacting with us. They're doing their own thing. They're, if you look at the biblical definition of an angel, the traditional definition, it's a messenger. It's that's all it is. An angel is a messenger of God. And over time, of course, we had fallen angels who supposedly did more than deliver messages, and that's partly why I guess they were fallen. But they have their own motive for doing this, their own reason, which is probably beyond our real understanding here. I like what Native Americans said about it in the material that I wrote about that. That it is we're supposed to harmonize with them, and we're supposed to help keep the two big forces in balance. And the two forces, creation on one hand, entropy in the other. Keep these two universal forces in balance. If you think about it, the trickster represents entropy. The trickster's going to make things fall apart. If you do what a trickster says, you're going to wind up falling off of a hill. You're going to fall into a hole. You're going to break a leg. You're going to poison somebody. You're going to do something stupid. That's what a trickster's all about. A trickster makes you look foolish. That's what it's all about. So you have to get by that trickster aspect to go further and harmonize with it. And that's what they did. They deliberately entered a process by which they were intentionally harmonizing with these forces. And you have to get by the force of entropy to get to the force of creation. That's the point there. I know we've talked about that before. I didn't explain all that here. We don't have time to go through all that again. But anyway, we're interacting with it. It's still delivering its message. It's still delivering, but it will allow you to sink deeper into a hole if you're in a hole. It will allow you to sink deeper in a hole. And entropy has a purpose and a motive. Entropy tears things apart. That's what it does. It breaks it down. It takes it to its most primordial state, whatever it is. That's what the physics process of entropy is all about. Creation, on the other hand, is taking things and putting them together in unique ways. And the two of those forces are in a massive cycle that goes on forever. We're stuck right in the middle of it. They believed you had to harmonize with it. And the whole idea of harmonizing with it is understanding both sides of the coin, being willing to interact with both sides. But the whole point is to achieve harmony, to have a harmonized balance. And that is really tough to do. If you see it all as great and good stuff, well, you're not really harmonizing with both sides of whatever this force is. And if you see it all bad, well, again, you're not harmonizing with whatever it is. And seeing it all aliens, fine, that people can do that. I am not giving out a popular idea here. I've never thought it was a popular idea. A lot of people have come out and said point blank that these ideas are the most incredible they'd ever read in the field. I mean, I've done so many of these podcasts now. I could probably talk for 4 or 5 hours straight on any one question. Eventually, I'd get into everything with it. But the ideas really are incredible. They are pretty different. Excuse me. Oh, yeah, thank you. Don't get many bless yous anymore. Yeah. But they're hard to understand. These ideas are, and you have to let go of a lot of your beliefs. And if you are convinced that every single UFO report is an alien flying around up there and the government knows about them and the government has their bodies everywhere, We've got all their technology and all that, and we've always had it. And everything that has ever been developed is developed because of aliens and alien technology. People can believe that. That is, I'm okay with that. Skeptics say that, skeptics are really mean about it. But no, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with people believing in God. I'm okay with people believing in that worshiping and prayer is a good thing. Anything that makes people feel better and is more harmonious and brings balance to their life, I'm all for. So people can believe what they want, but beliefs aren't truth. That's a different thing. So if you really look at the UFO field and you start boiling away, it's like in the book I say, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack of needles. You're looking for legitimate stuff in a whole lot of other stuff that looks the same, but it's not. It's not really legitimate. It's simply not. It's like I believe, this, I believe that a lot of this stuff from the Navy that we've seen, a lot of the films, are actually tests being done by black ops, basically, trying to see how good our radar is and how good the decoys that the Navy has created. Three-dimensional plasma-based decoys that can be put into any shape or form and put in any wavelength or frequency, which means they can be in visible light, not invisible. They can be visible in the visible light spectrum. They can take forms and shapes and be larger, and they're doing it with lasers that you can't see. You can't see the beam coming out because they're not using the visible light frequencies. They're using infrared or ultraviolet, and they used infrared. If you know anything about some of the Navy stuff, well, the pilots were flying, and they had a new type of radar on, and they had the infrared cameras on. They could only see the objects in infrared. And so I believe a lot of that was just, it's the test of drones, of not drones in the new sense of drones, in the current sense, but decoys that look like drones. They're decoys that are not physical objects in the sense that this phone is a physical object here.
So that's why they could go as fast as they did.
And move at impossible angles. Yeah, you whip it, like take a flashlight outside and move it from one side to the other. That's a pretty impossible angle you're doing there. If anybody's at the point where that light's hitting, it'll kill them. Too many G's. Well, there's no G's. There's nothing. Now, plasmas are physical objects. They're just made out of the physical objects that I'm in now. I'm in an ocean. So are you. We're in an ocean of air. There's countless molecules of air around me and dust everywhere. There's dust everywhere. And so there's such a thing as a dusty plasma, which in the Project Condign report that came out in 2006 by the British Ministry of Defense, they said point blank that legitimate UFOs are plasmas made of two kinds. They're dusty plasmas, and they are what they called exotic plasmas because it's gone a lot further than a dusty plasma. A dusty plasma is this ball of energy that starts pulling in molecules, ripping them apart, then taking the atoms and ripping them apart, and you've got this swirling soup then that is super hot, that is physical. And it's physical. It's not gas, but it's not solidity either. It's not a solid object either. It's something else. That's why it's the fourth state of matter. And then it can be moved around as long as you sustain the energy, which their device that they patented, you can see the Navy's patent online. It was like 2 years ago they patented it. I think that was being tested. I think that's what it is. The dusty plasmas are picked up on radar. You can a dusty plasma that forms is picked up on radar, and they've actually produced those. And recently, I have seen film of plasma research being done in space by astronauts, and it is incredible. The film is absolutely incredible. They have, of course, they have them in a vacuum, and they form these things, and they look like metallic objects. That you see all this stuff coming together, and they have extensions, and there's light coming out of it, and it's incredible. One of them looked just like a flying saucer with legs coming out of it. So to me and to Andrew, that is the key. The question is here: the real question, last thing I'll say, and then we'll save that maybe a follow-up for the next one, because I know you're running out of time, so am I here. But here's the thing. Neither Andrew and I are saying that the plasma itself is the entity. It's kind of like saying the word plasma, it got that name because plasmas had a shell like a cell does, like a blood cell. And in observing these things, they saw that they're almost like living cells. So the question is this, is the plasma itself the being? It's kind of like, is your body your being? Is it your intelligence? Is it your soul? Or is this plasma a conduit for something else to enter? Andrew believes that this interaction shell, that this interaction bubble that occurs around us, he believes, are you there, Brent?
I'm here. I got to, my
That's
battery's laying down. I got to hook up to electric, the house power here.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll only be another minute and then we'll end this. But anyway, okay. So the question, going back to it, is the plasma itself the entity, or is it doing something else? Andrew's section of the book says this. It says that the plasma and its nature, this fourth state of matter, which is a weird kind of matter, is creating this powerful electromagnetic field. And it's very possible that what it's doing is opening a portal, almost like a wormhole, but a portal of some kind. And Andrew believes what is then emerging is something that's interdimensional. That's what Andrew believes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying I believe that, nor do I disbelieve it. I don't know. I have had several thoughts about this, and I think that what we are seeing here is only one force, just one, but it manifests all over the place. It's associated with the earth right now, although it's probably everywhere in the universe. The Native Americans simply said everything is spiritual energy. Everything was created from spirit. We're all going back to it. All physical matter is spirit. So my thinking now, my main thinking, and this is pretty much what I put in the book, is that the manifestations that are occurring, no matter where they are around the earth, are all coming from the exact same intelligence, whatever it is. And you can call it a spiritual reality. Maheo might be the term if you're Cheyenne. That's the term they might use. But it's just one. But as it manifests to people as a messenger, it's manifesting to deliver whatever intention it has, but it's interacting with the person. That's why each interaction is unique to that person. So there's two possibilities with that. But again, it's all a very unpopular theory, I'm sure. A lot of people really like it because it explains a lot of things. But on the other hand, nuts and bolts people, no, they're not going to like it. And I don't think they ever will. So that's my spiel.
Well,
Any last question? Yeah, or comment? Go ahead.
On that note, one consistent theme with all the contactees and even abductees is they come up with a message, and the message being that we need to be careful about, nuclear energy. We could upset the balance of the universe, or however it's phrased. But anyway, and of course we have there's a whole book written on cases of UFOs appearing over nuclear power plants. And
yeah.
such. So it's, it's kind of maybe if there is one theme that, one of the themes maybe that could be pointed out that shows the real message behind all the noise.
Yeah, its intention. Its intentions are good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the rest of, some of
I
it
think
is.
that's a very good point. Yes. But, in some of those cases where they come walking out of the saucer and say you're destroying yourselves with nuclear energy, they're telling a farmer in a field who's probably been worried about, that this happened during the Cold Wars when it really all started, this modern age of UFOs. And everybody was worried. We thought the Russians had more nukes than we did. They were building massive underground shelters over there, as we're finding out now. I mean, it's incredible. Odessa has hundreds of miles of tunnels deep under that entire city, all of which were Cold War bomb shelters. I've seen film of them now. It's incredible what Russia was doing. All these cities have these things. But we thought they had all this stuff and there wasn't much we could do, and they didn't. Russia was really a paper tiger during that time. They really didn't have much. They faked us out, made us think that they did, but people were afraid of that. You probably remembered in school. I remember getting under the desk, in my little town of Hughesville, Pennsylvania, where I was born and raised, little tiny town with less than 1,000 people at that time. We go in these little rooms, our little classroom with maybe 15 other students, and now we're going to practice duck and cover. We get down under the desk. Okay, when the bomb goes off in Williamsport, which was the closest city to us, that's going to protect us. That's what they told us, which of course is crazy. But that's the kind of stuff people had heard about then. So certainly when an alien walks out of the flying saucer, and it's a really attractive 6-foot tall woman who's real Nordic looking, who has long flowing blonde hair, which was very common back in the 50s when this started. And even in the late 40s, when all these contactee reports were, they came out attractive, sexy women, always appearing to men. Not, all the reports weren't with men, but these tall Nordic women were always appearing to men, and they did give them the same message all the time. But that's coming, the appearance these things are taking, it came out of the mental status of those people who saw them. That's what I'm saying. That's where it came out from. They're not altering their message or what their intent is by their physical appearance and their apparent behavior, because some of their behavior is just bizarre. But if you're confused to start with, if you're a confused person, whatever it is that comes out may do something that's really confusing, because it's simply reflecting your mental state.
Yeah. Oh, man. Amen.
All right, I think this is a good place to stop. We've gone a little over our 30 minutes, but
oh no,
I think that's good.
We do about 45 or so, so we're right on target. I mean, I've been doing some longer
All right.
here lately, and it's been working good. So,
well, if you got any final pot shot at me, go ahead. Tell me how stupid I am, and then we'll end this.
No, you're quite brilliant. Scholarly book. Oh,
yeah.
Origins of the Gods. I've been recommending that to quite a few people. So, no question there.
Well, please keep doing that.
I'm sure it's getting a lot of.
Well, let me tell you something. Honestly, I have no idea whatsoever how many books have sold. None. Zero. None. I know it's been on several bestseller lists, but I don't know. I haven't heard one word about how many physical copies or how many Kindle copies or how many audios have sold. So I have no idea. I don't. But then it only came out a couple months ago. You got to keep that in mind. It's only been out for a few months.
Right. And I know you and Andrew have been very busy doing all sorts of podcasts and doing all you can to promote it. And you've got a forward by, Eric Von Däniken, from Chariots of the Gods to Origins of the Gods.
Yeah.
He was quite impressed with it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So.
And like I said, I'm talking to Whitley Strieber tomorrow. Whitley is really impressed by it. His ideas have changed quite a bit. I intend to talk about Betty Andreasson with him too. I know you got to meet Betty Andreasson, and it's interesting how all of our experiences with these things are initially they're framed with our state of mind at the time. And I can see that with Whitley, and I can see it with Betty. And then over time, you begin looking at your experience in a different way and seeing it very, very different. Because before she died, Betty was seeing her experience with these aliens, which I believe Betty was telling exactly what she saw and interacted with in her experience of these little 3 foot tall aliens that came through her windows and her walls and all that. But in the end, you tell me how she interpreted it all. Do you remember?
Oh, a very
Christian.
Christian, yeah.
Yeah, she saw it as angels, something that God did, and she made sense of it through her religious beliefs, and that's fine. That's fine. But she didn't see that initially, and to some extent, initially, she was terrified of it in the beginning. Am I correct with that?
Yeah, yeah. And uh, some of the things that she saw and experienced, she had a Christian foundation, but they were from different cultures, different symbols and such.
Yeah.
The experience she had at the conference there in Virginia Beach, where we were, and I had the whistling vessels that were blown, and she had that experience and drew me this very elaborate drawing of what she saw, from her experience with the whistles, and it was things, the symbolism of a large bird behind the large omphalos or something you call it, a type upright stone figure with a bird fire at the base.
Right.
And it was and then later she was reading about ancient Greek and legends and such that had that kind of symbolism that she was seeing. And of course, going back to her first experiences with seeing the eagle figure and the phoenix type thing. Anyway, yeah, these things get pretty wild.
Yeah.
And intriguing. So, thank you very much, Greg, again for.
All right. We'll do it again. Maybe we can do one next week.
Okay.
Sure. All right. Looking at my calendar here, I'll be traveling some after that. But you're looking at my calendar too. I see you looking over here.
Can you see actually, I can't see. I'm looking up at the little thing here to stop recording.
There's my calendar.
I didn't know if you wanted...
I'm old school. Look at all this. These are all radio shows or podcast shows.
I don't have as many as you do, right? But I'm doing the same thing.
I got you. All right. Well, until next time, I'll say goodbye to the listeners. Take care.
All right. Ditto for me too. Take care, everyone.